Good morning, everybody. This is the book I was mentioning in my prior video that I wanted to read a little from. It's a good little number. It was a few bucks. I have many different sources, but there's just a couple of things that stuck out in here that I thought would be cool to read and to show like this paradigm shift that's really happening and how we were called to rise up and, break the chains off people, so to speak. But this is a great little number. It's called Common Law Community Training Manual, established in the reign of natural liberty, the common law, and its courts. Issued by the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State. Yes, guys, we know that the so-called church, these Christian churches, I've been trying to say, they're all part of the system of bondage, right? A lot of people don't like that. But I'll just read a little bit from it. It's a really, just really helpful stuff. I mean, this was really like, I don't even think it was even $10. You know, having little pamphlets like this, I like having it in my purse. Say you go somewhere and you gotta wait a long time, It's very light, little things like this. I love reading while I'm waiting in public at places and stuff because my mind, it's like input, input. I cannot sit there and just do nothing, So you can always use your time wisely no matter what. I'll try to leave just a couple of points. Maybe it could bring some clarity on things because it talks about a little bit what's been done, what's going on behind the curtain, so to speak. And it said, history was made February 11th, 2013, when the first Catholic Pope in history resigned from his office during peacetime in order to avoid arrest for protecting and aiding child raping priests. Barely 2 weeks later, the same Pope Benedict Joseph Ratzinger was found guilty by the International Common Law Court of Justice for crimes against humanity, including child trafficking and the arrest warrant that he had anticipated and which provoked his resignation was issued against him on February 25th. Yeah, you think people are going to stop going to these churches, They think, oh, the next one's going to be different. Well, it goes to show that they're not above reproach and, we the people need to sound our voice. And it just shows, like, that the righteous will judge the wicked, Not saying I'm in any category. I'm just saying it just shows more and more what's happening, right? And that evil will not win. It says, evading justice inside the Vatican, Ratzinger is presently an international fugitive from the law and a living example of the power of common law courts to successfully prosecute so-called heads of state. The lawful verdict of the International Common Law Court of Justice was a shot heard around the world that has spawned efforts in 21 countries to establish similar popular courts of justice to reclaim the law from the wealthy and their compliant governments. And you have that website you can check out. This manual provides instruction and training to those of you who have moved from words to actions. We speak to those who not only recognize the permanent war being waged against humanity by a global corporate tyranny, but who are actively engaging in dismantling that murderous system as its source so that justice can be made in a reclaimed world. I like to think that's what we're doing. We're dismantling this system. We're probably the virus that they really fear. You are part of a growing movement to create a new, liberated society within the shell of the old by first allowing the law to act for all people and not a clique of judicial specialists and their friends. That new society is emerging through every act of courage and integrity by we who know what's at stake, and that is our children and the future of our species. Why we are taking action, freeing ourselves from remembering the true law. Man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains. The fact has altered little over the centuries, but the chains of oppression over much of our species has been forged through the weapons of violence and ignorance, and they can be undone. Long before any rulers held sway over humanity, men and women established customs and laws among themselves to ensure their peace and liberties as free, self-governing people. Of course, the Most High governs us, and we follow the Ten Commandments, and by following the Most High's law, you are free, because when you don't, enslavement ensues. They did so from an inherent recognition of a natural law. This is what the book calls it, of course, or of equality, or divine law, which we know is the Most High's law. But you'll see that in a lot of law books, they'll call it divine law, whereby no one has any right to dominate or rule over others, to seize more of creation than another, or to own any part of a world given equally to all people. I guess it's true. Communism isn't what we were told. I guess it's true. Your equal share, equal slice of the pie. It is the divine principle of creation that every child born is endowed with unalienable liberties that no authority, law, government, or religion can diminish or abolish. Any power that attempts to do so is tyrannical and illegitimate. Let these dishonorable agents really look at that. There you go, you dishonorable agents. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Let me read this again. Any power that attempts to do so is tyrannical and illegitimate, even if it operates according to its own laws. For such tyranny is a denial of the natural order and an attack upon divinity, the Most High, and humanity. Two great principles summarize this natural law. Number one, all things exist and are held in common. By the state of nature, no one has any more of a claim to the earth than another, as noted by a founder of modern law, Thomas Hobbes. I demonstrate in the first place that in the natural state of men, which state we may properly call the state of nature, all men have equal right unto all things. There's a book called Leviathan, did you know, guys? 1651. Because if you look up state and then put the word Leviathan, it'll show like a picture of Rick James. Like the personification. I think it was King Louis. I'm not sure the king, but you'll see it when you plug it in. Number two, the law does harm to no one. Actus, regis, nemini, facit, injurium, arising from the 10 Commandments. Ooh, I didn't even know I was going to read that today. And look at the vid I did yesterday. And God's law to do no harm to one's neighbor. This principle forms the basis of modern law. John Stuart Hill articulated this principle in On Liberty, where he argued that the only purpose for which power can be rightly exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. That was in 1869. An equivalent idea was earlier stated in France's Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen of 1789. As liberty consists in the freedom to do everything, which injures no one else. Hence, the exercise of the natural rights of each man has no limits except those which assure to the other members of the society the enjoyment of the same rights. These limits can only be determined by law. So I'll just read a couple of things because it was pretty good. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I could reference this book again. I'll put my little bookmark in it, in case anything stands out. This natural law exists to maintain the natural peace and equity between people and is their shield and protector against unjust rule, rather than a force over them. Within the ancient traditions of tribal communities, especially in the Anglo-Saxon world, this law evolved into what became known as the customary or common law, or the law of the land. It has strong echoes in the customs of indigenous nations all over the world. Here is a basic summary of the nature of true or common law versus arbitrary law. Number 1, every man, woman, and child is born and is by nature free, equal, and sovereign, and possess an inherent knowledge of what is true and right. Accordingly, no one can be subordinated to another or to any external authority, since every person's inherent wisdom and liberty make them complete and sufficient creations in themselves within a wider community of equals. Number 2, this personal sovereignty is a reflection of the wider natural law, whereby all life by nature is indivisible and placed in common for the survival and happiness of all. In any just society, this commonality endows all people with the unalienable right to establish among themselves their own governance and defend themselves against any tyranny or violence, influence in that inflicted by external authorities. Any authority that rules unjustly and arbitrarily without the free and uncoerced consent of the people has lost its right to rule and can be overthrown. Unjust government is not government, but what is that? Tyranny. That was from Plato. This natural law gives rise to customary common law, whose purpose is to protect the inherent liberties and sovereignty of men and women in a community by maintaining equity and peace among them. You should look up the maxims of equity. The common law derives its authority from the people themselves and from the capacity of the people to know what is just and to judge right and wrong for themselves. This capacity is expressed in a jury system of 12 freely chosen people who are the ultimate judge and authority under common law and its courts. Historically, common law arose in England after the 11th century Norman conquest as a bulwark in defense of the people against the arbitrary rule of self-appointed elites, especially monarchs and popes. The authority of these elites was derived unnaturally from warfare, violent conquest, and the theft of the earth, rather than from the consent of the community and its basis, the divine law of peace and equality. This elite rule arose most strongly in the Roman Empire and its descendant, the Church of Rome, under whose beliefs God, lower G as we see, is a dominator and conqueror, domini, and all people are subjects of the Pope. Remember we talked about this false religion being pushed on people? So we've got to know thyself. Such a conquest-based rule of papal and kingly elites gave rise to a legal system known as civil or Roman law, and the belief that men and women are not endowed with the capacity for self-rule and wisdom. All law and authority is therefore derived externally from statutes derived and imposed by a ruler, whether a pope, a monarch, or a government. This system developed from Aristotelian philosophy and Roman property law, in which creation is divided and human beings are treated as chattels and the possessions of others, and are thereby devoid of inherent liberties. The people are thus in every sense enslaved, cut off from the world, given freely and in common to all. This slave system ranks and categorizes all people and grants restricted freedoms, which is called fright, homs, or slave privileges. New word alert. That are defined and limited through statutes issued by rulers. So common and civil Roman law are therefore fundamentally opposed and at war with each other. They cannot be reconciled, When they say, touch and agree, I do not consent, because we cannot be reconciled. Since they arise from two completely notions of humanity and justice. Common law knows life as a free gift given equally to all, while under civil law, life is a conditional privilege and humanity is a managed slave populace. Accordingly, governments operate and practice according to civil, which is statutes law, and denigrate or ignore common law altogether through the rule of unaccountable judge, which they're nothing but administrators. It's all administrative courts. They're not judicial dominated courts. The most extreme form of elite-based civil Roman law is what is called papal or canon law, which defines the Church of Rome as the only legitimate authority on earth, to which all other laws, people, and governments are subordinate. See how they copy the Most High with their one world order? The Most High has his version of it, and there you go, copycats, but in the wrong way, right? Canon law is self-governing and completely unaccountable to anything but itself. Behind its front of Christian rhetoric, Roman Catholicism is a neo-pagan cult based upon the late 3rd century Roman emperor worship system known as Sol Invictus, in which one sovereign entitled God and Master, Deus et Dominus, rules heaven and earth, specifically the Pope. This tyrannical cult has not surprisingly caused more warfare, genocide, conquest, and murder than any power in human history, and continues to constitute the single greatest threat to common law and human liberty. That's why I expose so much about it. I mean, I could really go into this book. This book is great. I just wanted to just show like the cool stuff that's in here. They even give you a little bit at the end. I mean, for such a small little thing, you never know, so it's good to actually pick up what you can. I like having hard copies because I can take it with me anywhere, but you can print stuff like this, and I just wanted to show that this information was known just because on the topic yesterday, I was trying to say the Bill of Rights was based on the 10 Commandments and how we've fallen away, that when we fall away from God's law, we enslave ourselves. But we also have to know our enemy, guys. So strategy and tactics, 40 key lessons from Sun Tzu. You learn a lot because I talked about how this whole thing is like a fine art. Well, war is an art if you didn't know. So this is the, art of war, some of the points. So one skilled in battle summons others and is not summoned by them. It's funny. One skilled at moving an enemy forms and the enemy must follow. offers and the enemy must take. It's funny. I like number 5. War is only a means to a political end, not an end itself. Look at 6. Knowing the enemy and knowing yourself. You got to know your enemy and yourself. And in every battle, no danger. Not knowing the enemy and knowing yourself, one defeat for every victory. Not knowing the enemy and not knowing yourself, in every battle, certain defeat. Defend and one, see, they have you in a state where you're always defending yourself. Look, defend and one is insufficient. Attack and one has a surplus. So we gotta attack these ghouly ghouls, right? Not defend ourselves. So there's just a lot of great quotes. There was another one, but of course my hands are going crazy. There's just too much I got going here. Because there was a really great quote right here. Right here. Let me finish with this. This was great. From Joe Mickens, Republican veteran of the Irish Civil War 1974 interview. For what you call the law is but a club of the rich over the lowest of men, sanctifying the conquest of the earth by a few, and making their theft the way of things. But over and above these pitiful statues of yours that enclose the common land and reduce us to poverty, to make you fat, stands the law of creation, which renders judgment on rich and poor alike, making them one. For freedom is the man who will thus turn the world upside down. Therefore, no wonder he has enemies. Gerald Winstanley, The True Leveler's Standard, Surrey, England, 1649. I want you guys to really meditate on that, because we've been going through a lot with a lot of these haters. I heard Chris too, amazing, righteous man, doing the Most High's work, helping people be free. Now he's up to 9 haters, guys. I hope it wasn't me who referred, you're going to have your haters. If everyone likes you, that means you're fake, right? Everyone wants to be loved by this world, and what does the Most High say? Wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High. Foolishness. They ain't meant to get it, but no wonder we have enemies, right? But this is a really great book. Just a couple of bucks. It's so cheap, but you have to recognize value, right? I'm not saying you have to go out and get it. I'll read from it. You have this video. You can refer to it, and I'll read different parts. It's like, I like reading straight through. That way, sometimes I need to remind myself of these points. But I'll talk to you soon, guys. I have another topic. I have a video that I'll put up later. I'm going to go do some work right now, and stay blessed. But this is from the Common Law Community Training Manual. We're here to break the chains, guys. Have a great morning.